The princess came with a fortune. The human asked for ships. Not for war, not for escape, but for evacuation. Because the world below them was dying faster than royal protocol could pretend otherwise. Halcyon Reach burned under a storm of falling stations and Varkesh fire. Millions trapped between ruined ports and a tightening blockade. Princess Naelyra Voss stood in the command chamber of Avaris Station with treasury bonds ready to place in Commander Adrian Cole's hands. And the human, scarred, soot-streaked, jacket-torn, looked past the wealth to the planet in the viewport and said, "I do not want your money, Your Highness. I want every shuttle, cargo tug, or hauler, yacht, ferry, and reserve carrier your nobles are hiding, because if people are still down there, your fortune is already worthless." That was the first crack in the room. Because people who inherit power are taught that everything can be bought. Naelyra had expected greed. The court had promised greed. They told her Adrian Cole was a frontier contractor with a gift for impossible extractions and a talent for disobeying orders. A human who had broken blockades and once rammed a destroyer rather than leave civilians at a dock. She expected a number so large it would offend her ministers. Instead, he asked how many private ships were being held back for noble families. Silence dropped across the chamber. One minister protested. One admiral called the question insulting. Adrian did not flinch. He only touched the tactical display and spread the burning map wider. The Varkesh were not rushing conquest. They were herding, controlling orbit, trapping population centers, waiting for panic to make rescue efficient for the invader and impossible for everyone else, lest someone broke the pattern. "Send everything," he said, "everywhere, all at once. Decoy runs in the north, emergency descents in the east. Cargo barges packed with shield foam, palace cruisers gutted for seating racks. Make the sky too crowded, too human for the enemy to predict. When a human says save everyone you can, he is already counting the fuel before anyone else finds the courage to agree." Naelyra knew what approval would cost. Her advisors had begged retreat. Save the bloodline, preserve the treasury. Abandon the colony, return later with speeches and memorials. But the world beneath them still turned under smoke. And beneath that smoke were workers, children, medics, dock crews, ordinary people who had never once sat at a royal table. So she opened the sealed hangars, released the ceremonial carriers, seized noble reserve craft, and placed Adrian Cole over all civilian lift operations. Outrage followed instantly. One lord threatened legal revolt. Another demanded a seat ledger ranked by class. Adrian ignored them and started assigning jobs, palace guards to crowd lanes, archivists to manifests, idle pilots to ferry wings. Within an hour, the station stopped looking regal and started looking useful. And Naelyra, walking stripped corridors stacked with water tanks and med crates, felt something changing in the air. Less obedience, more purpose. The rich kept asking what could be preserved. The human kept asking who was still breathing. The first convoy descended through debris and missile wash. Adrian flew lead because he would not order a run he would not make himself. Naelyra rode beside him because commanding rescue from safety had begun to feel like cowardice. Below them, Halcyon Reach was broken open. Towers burning, transit rails collapsed, landing zones jammed with civilians holding one bag, one child, one last decision. The ramps dropped and the work began. No speeches, only motion. Wounded first, children first, leave the luggage. Leave anything that cannot breathe. Miners lifted strangers, medics worked on shuttle floors. Engineers welded handrails onto decorative frames so more passengers could stand, and every time panic rose, Adrian's voice cut through smoke like steel, calm, rough, absolute. Again and again, the ships rose full and returned empty. And Naelyra watched people she had spent a lifetime misreading become larger under pressure. Servants carrying mechanics, heirs surrendering seats, exhausted soldiers handing water to crying children before touching their own canteens. This is the part empires never understand. Humanity does not become heroic by feeling more. It becomes heroic by acting before comfort has finished arguing. By sunset, the Varkesh adapted. Gunships dropped into the southern basin, where the largest refugee flow had been cornered between dead freight lines and dry flood channels. Too many civilians, too few holes, too little time. The admirals began speaking in acceptable losses. Naelyra hated the phrase on sight. Adrian asked instead how many ships remained. 12 all-Royal Reserve craft, all built for luxury. All shielded for heavy atmosphere runs. Good, he said. Then they are finally worth something. The Basin Run became the story survivors told their grandchildren. 12 royal ships diving through ash. Naelyra aboard the first, Adrian aboard the last. They loaded until deck alarms screamed overload. Launched, returned, loaded again. While Varkesh walkers closed over the ridgelines, and the final escape window shrank to minutes. The last shuttle jammed half open when a stabilizer lock twisted under shrapnel impact. Passengers packed inside, ramp refusing to seal. Adrian dropped from the loading line, tore open the panel with bleeding hands, kicked the warped latch free, shoved the final civilians inside, and stepped back out before the pilot could grab him. Remember this: a human will walk away from fortune without blinking, but he will fight the universe itself for one more seat on a rescue ship. Naelyra screamed for him overcomes, but Adrian only looked up through furnace light and smoke, rifle hanging empty in one hand, the other lifting in a signal to launch. Behind him stood a handful of colonial volunteers. Ahead of them came the dark shapes of Varkesh infantry, steady, mechanical, certain. The shuttle lifted because he had given it no other choice. And from the cockpit glass, the princess saw the human and the others opened fire. Not for victory, not for revenge, just for time, human minutes. The most expensive thing in a collapsing world. Orbital defense struck the basin moments. Later, in a bloom of white that erased the ground and sealed the corridor for the last departing ship. Days afterward, when the convoy limped into safe space, carrying far more souls than the station had believed possible, Naelyra's ministers asked what reward should be recorded for Commander Adrian Cole, and the princess saw it marked and sleepless. Answered with the line that outlived every ledger on Avera station. I offered the human a fortune. He asked for evacuation ships. And that is how I learned the difference between ruling people and refusing to abandon them.